right. Coming to you today from New York City, our apartment here. John Beaudoin joins me in a few minutes, an engineer, data analyst, author of The Real CDC, COVID Facts for Regular People. He's got some updated facts for us. You can follow him on X at John, Beaudoin Senior, SR. There's the book there, The Real CDC. And after I talk to John, we're going to be joined by Nick Searcy, actor, producer of The War on Truth, author of Justify This, A Career Without Compromise. He, of course, is notable for his work in The Shape of Water and many other films. And he's got a colorful, decorated career. You'll recognize him when you see him. You can follow him at Yes Nick Searcy on X. Searcy is spelled Searcy, and we'll be right back with John Beaudoin after this.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way.
He was an alcoholic
Because of social media and pornography, PTSD,
love addiction,
fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous.
I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that?
I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people.
I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals.
Let's just deal with what's real.
We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time.
Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat.
If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
You could spend thousands of dollars and dozens of hours trying to look a few years younger, or you can skip all that and the hassle and go with what works, Genucel Skincare. Genucel is the secret to better skin. Their products are made in the USA using a proprietary technology that combines a naturally effective base with non-GMO ingredients. In fact, you might have witnessed the astonishing effects of Genucel during a recent unplanned moment of our show, when just a little Genucel XV restored my skin within minutes right before your eyes. That is how fast these products work.
I know I'm a snob about the products I use on my face. Everybody knows it. Every time I go to the dermatologist's office, they're just rows and rows of different creams. Retinols, vitamin C cream, under eye cream, night creams.
Scrubs.
And then when I get to the counter, they're overpriced. All kinds of products that you can all find at Genucel.com.
Susan and I love Genucel so much, we've created our own bundle so you can try our favorite anti-wrinkle creams, correcting serums, under-eye treatments. Say goodbye to those fine lines, forehead wrinkles, skin redness, even those dark under-eye bags. Women and men of all skin types, Genucel has got you covered. Order right now at Genucel.com/Drew to save 50%, actually over 50%, and you'll get a free luxury spa box plus free shipping. That is Genucel.com/Drew, GENUCEL.com/DREW. As I said, Nick Searcy will be here in just a minute after I talk to John Beaudoin. You can follow Nick also on nicksearcy.locals.com. The movie, of course, is The War on Truth. The War on Truth movie.com, Capital Punishment, the movie.com. You'll hear more about Nick in just a few minutes, but we're going to first go into John. Before I do, though, can we take a look at the schedule coming up so I can update you guys on what we are looking at in this week and the further way. So we have a whistleblower followed by Jeffrey Tucker in here tomorrow. Mike Benz coming in next week to give us an update on the Blob. Kelly Victory and Brian Hooker takes over the week later in that week. Let's see, I can't quite read it. Unfortunately, I'm too far enough away from Caleb. Maybe you can help me out on who the guests are. I think I got tomorrow wrong.
Tomorrow we have
the whistleblower I see is coming June 6th.
Aaron McIntyre and Jeffrey Tucker is tomorrow, May 22nd. Then on the 28th, we have Mike Benz coming in. On May 29th, Dr. Kelly Victory is filling in as host and bringing in Brian Hooker.
Yep.
And then we have a bunch of interesting ones coming up right after that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Let's bring in our friend John Beaudoin. And John, welcome. If you don't mind, let's get John here. I wanted to review sort of how we met and how you got going here, in the sense that, as I remember, you called in on a Twitter Spaces or something and said, "You're not going to believe what I'm seeing in the death certificates I'm looking at." And I think it was Massachusetts and Michigan at the time. But tell us the story, how this all got going for you.
Yeah, sure. Exactly like you said, Dr. Drew. I joined a Twitter space. I was brought up to be a speaker. And then I had, a minute to be able to catch your attention, which I did. And then I came on again, maybe a month later, and you said to your producer, "Get this guy on." And then I think it was almost a year ago, I was on your program for the whole program. And we talked about the causes of death individually, what was going up, what was going down, what year, when, and I was able to show that it was respiratory in 2020, and everything switched on a year boundary to circulatory and blood. Totally different cause of death in 21 when the vaccine rolled out.
Now, since we last talked, I can tell you that I'm seeing, and I've had confirmed by several cardiologists, that COVID itself is causing some accelerated heart disease. I've seen some very, very strange lesions. I myself, when I was sick with the Alpha Delta, I remember climbing stairs with 103-degree fever and feeling my pulse, and it was like 58. And I thought, oh, this is affecting my heart. And lo and behold, I had a CT coronary angiogram a couple weeks ago, and lo and behold, I've gone from 0 to now a little something in my LAD. Interesting. So to me, this suggests that the spike protein is doing endothelial problems such as we thought. Therefore, I expect to also see it from the vaccine. And I have seen some cases in patients, young people with accelerated heart disease, strange anatomy, unusual anatomy, no previous COVID history that they knew of. So how does that fit with the data you're looking at?
So with regard to vaccine status, there's one thing the government won't give anybody, and that's the vaccine status. They have everything on their databases. All it would take, and I have a lawsuit for this in federal court. It's at the First Circuit Court of Appeals right now. Every state has an immunization information system, and they use it to track down people not vaccinated. They won't use it to evaluate the people who were vaccinated. If they did so, they would find that they killed a lot of people with the vaccines. To address the heart thing specifically, and the fact that you mentioned spike protein, I just want to ask, I'm not a doctor, not a biologist. I just want to ask you to be a little bit open because everybody blames the spike protein. There are multiple mechanisms. Okay. The LNP itself, transfection as a process itself is reactive in many people, and it transfects endothelial cells. So it might not have anything to do with producing spike. So it's multiple.
The liquid nanoparticle.
Yeah, lipid, the lipid bilayer on the side of every cell. Yeah. In order to say, you let me in, that's what they put in there. People react to it.
So most of the sort of consternation I've seen around the LNPs has been in the zone of what we call parenchymal cell damage or incorporation. So the heart muscle itself, or the ovaries or the testes, this is where people are finding it and worried about it. I'm sure it could. I mean, it's a lipid bilayer and get into any cell, but I don't think of it as something causing the kinds of injury to the endothelium that I suspect. Again, this is all still early days, but I think the spike protein is doing that. So convince me that LNP does it also.
Well, so the spike protein's not doing it, as you know. It's really T-cell attack that's killing the cells. And I'm not a biologist. This isn't even the stuff I talk about it, but I'm happy to talk about it. Just simple transfection alone, you have something foreign. If the polyethylene glycol is recognized by your body, some people you've heard of antiphospholipid syndrome, where people react to the phospholipids. You could put water or saline in these LNPs instead of the mRNA, and in a portion of the society, you would find the same things. Arne Burkhardt's work in Germany, where he looked at the tissues, heart, brain, everything. He found spike protein all over, not just in the places you mentioned, but it was all over. And smooth muscle cells are basically the inside lining of your blood vessels are ripe to be transfected.
All right, let's get now back to the death certificates and what you've been finding. When you first reported this stuff, and I continue to be, but of course it caught my attention because it did sort of fit what I was seeing. I was very worried that the vaccine was the primary culprit. Have you made any progress in sort of culling this out?
Yeah, tremendous progress. So in my engineering career, we tend to design top down and verify bottom up. And when I say that, I mean layers of abstraction. Let's see, let me break it down for your audience. Higher levels have less detail, like all-cause deaths. There's no detail. Person died or didn't die. Then you get into age stratification, causes of death individually. You can then get down into the individual death certificates or records. which have multiple causes of death on them. And you can look for combinations. Did they die with acute renal failure and COVID, or without COVID, or pneumonia, or cardiac arrhythmia, and so forth? When you get down to the lowest level of abstraction, it's like a 5, 10, 12,000 page medical file on a patient who was in the hospital for a month. You know every hour their vital signs, you know the blood labs taken, all the medications they were given, and all the reactions they had. So I try to look, I start with the high level all cause, I go down through it, and then I have received 6 medical files that were several thousand pages each. And what I found is really scary. There were many people that were, it's a homicide, an unnatural taking of a life, whether or not it's murder or involuntary manslaughter would have to be proven. But it was definitely the protocols that killed people. They went in with 95% oxygen. They were given a COVID test right away. If it was positive, they get put on remdesivir. Their breathing was 15 breaths per minute. Temperature on one was 97.9, 95% oxygen, like I said. Heart rate was, I think, 80 or 82. So, Dr. Drew, everything was normal. They put the person on remdesivir. And then I've got the hour by hour, right? They started them on midazolam, lorazepam, propofol, dexmedetomidine, and fentanyl. And they had them on a ventilator pretty soon after that. And when they put them on the ventilator...
After that?
Yeah, that was a prep for ventilation. They prepped them for ventilation.
For the ventilator.
Yes.
Okay.
Those are
I noticed that John Campbell over in Great Britain was making a big deal out of midazolam or Versed. That's just to keep somebody comfortable on a ventilator. I mean, that's not. I mean, it wasn't a smart thing to do, but it was not killing people. The killing people was in my estimation, if indeed this is the issue, would be the barotrauma from the ventilator, as well as the oxygen. People don't know oxygen damages the lungs because you put in over 50% oxygen into somebody's lungs, the O2 goes to free radicals and breaks down the lung tissue. Then you add to that the high pressure you're pushing in because of the cytokine storm and the lungs are becoming stiffer. All that is bad. That accelerates the deterioration of the lungs. And so your theory is that that's a lot of why people were dying of COVID.
Yeah, I mean, I reviewed it with doctors. They reviewed some of the medical files and said there's just no way this should have been done. It's the sequence of events. It's not everything. Like, yeah, I understand you need to make a person calm. The anti-anxieties, the painkillers, even the muscle paralytics. You don't want somebody ripping their own trach out, right? So I get all that, but a lot of it was done with people that didn't have a problem. And the drugs created
This is
depression of breathing.
No, this is the problem. Is that they were throwing. There are two things as I see it. And again, I'm just bouncing this off you to see if I'm getting if I'm resonating with you, or if this is accurate what I'm feeling and thinking. Which is that they were treating the numbers, not the patient. The patient comes in with an O2 of, mark 84 or something. It's COVID. That person needs a ventilator, and if they touch 78, boom, they're on. Who knows if they would have stayed at 70 or 85? Who knows? I mean, this is wild that they were just throwing people on the ventilator. But that was part of the panic and some of the craziness that was going on at the time, to be fair. But the other thing, and I'm wondering if you saw this or were you able to look into it as it pertains to what you have these multi-thousand page medical records at specific institutions. One of the things I noticed early in the pandemic, doctors were afraid to do anything on their own because they were told not to by the administration. And very quickly, the administrations put together what are called clinical pathways or protocols. And remdesivir was just on the protocol, and you had to do it because the hospital administration required it, not because the doctors were doing anything, nor the drug companies. It was the hospitals. Did you see that?
Yeah, you pretty much nailed what was happening. So the centralization of medical practice through evidence-based medicine. I mean, I have it in the book.
Terrible.
It comes out of Canada. In the 1960s, Canada revamped their whole health system. I'll be quick through this. And it grew through grants to McMaster University, where they developed EBM. The term was coined around 1981. There's a couple of guys in my book I write about. By the time 1992 rolled out, every medical school in North America was using EBM. Now, it sounds good, evidence-based medicine, but what it did is it flipped the scientific method on its head, where they relegated the patient in front of you and the individual symptoms that they have to the bottom of evidence, and the primary evidence is the research papers or what the NIH tells you to do or what the administration tells you to do. So you nailed it. I mean, that's basically what happened. It's a behavior modification mechanism, both from the NIH and then through the CARES Act.
Well, you're missing a piece. You're missing a piece because I just want to tell a quick story. I was, when during COVID, one of the things we were doing with this show was sort of trying to help people understand things, and I would talk to ICU doctors on the show. And I remember at one point I was going, "Why aren't you using tocilizumab? I mean, the data looks good on that." And say, fast forward a month. He's the same guy. Goes, yes. And then I gave talks. I go, oh, now you're using it? Yes, it's in our protocols now. And I thought, oh boy. So now you have to do it. And what committee decided that that's now the protocol for treating your patients in cytokine storm? But that's where I started sniffing real trouble. I was working in a psychiatric hospital, 80s, 90s, early, all the way through the 2010. And I saw the evidence-based thing really came on strong in psychiatry and especially in addiction medicine. And it was so egregiously inaccurate. I saw it, it was so glaringly obvious to me what was going on at the time. The data they were using to make the evidence-based recommendations, the time horizons were rarely more than 3 months and never more than 6 months. These are people with chronic, lifelong diseases. I was dealing with addiction at the time. A 6-month horizon tells you very little in the setting of treating drug addiction. And that was, thus saith the Lord. Now, why did they get the power to do that? Where was that energy coming from? Well, guess where? When you could accelerate the patient to the outpatient setting, who do you think was very excited about this? The insurance companies. They were the ones that really put the energy behind the evidence-based. Then the medical record, the electronic medical record came in, and then the hospital administration both got excited about it because working with the insurance agencies optimized their returns as a hospital. And with the electronic medical record, there was no longer any avoiding it because now it was coming from the regulators in addition to the insurance companies. Am I correct here?
Absolutely. I mean, we call it topping off in engineering. You get people with 60%, like when we do fault coverage on chips. So they got 60% of people with solicitation through the CARES Act and all the monetary incentives, CMS.gov, the NCTAP payout program. I'll mention that in a minute with regard to timing. The 40% you didn't get, you get another 30% with coercion from the medical boards, FSMB, ABIM, the American Board of Family Medicine, pediatrics. There's a public webpage from the 3 CEOs of the American Board of Internal Medicine, Family Medicine, and Pediatrics saying, if you spread vaccine misinformation, your license will be suspended or revoked. And there's no real data behind it. So that coercion is felt by doctors all around the country. Then you've got the 5% apathetic, and the last 5% who won't go along with any of that, they either quit, they're fired, or they're suppressed all over social media, and they're denigrated and derogated. So yeah, you're right.
Well, this sounds like the exact numbers that Matthias Desmet points out in his mass formation theory. He says 5 to 10% see through what's happening and speak up about it. It's how to get the 70% that's just trying to go along to get along to stand up also courageously against some of this egregiousness. But I will tell you, it is the same damn playbook they use for opiates. It's how we got the opioid crisis. This precise playbook. The only ingredient we had in the opioid, we had 2 other ingredients of the opioid crisis. One was we had evangelizing physicians. We had pain medicine doctors who were evangelizing for eradicating pain in America. There should never be pain in America, which is an insane idea. Pain is the 5th vital sign became their mechanism for delivering that. And what was the other thing I was going to mention that we had with the opioids? Oh, escaped me. But there was one other element that we didn't have so much. I can't remember. Go ahead, John.
I mean, that's strategic planning. That was my career. If I wanted to do something like this, it was done exactly as I would have wanted to do it. The CARES Act was written in 2018. They only changed a few variables. One indication I wanted to get to was acute renal failure. Yeah, I know that Ed's on your program now and then. I talked to Carlos and Yuri, who run the numbers for Ed. We don't collaborate, we corroborate. And they're seeing the same thing I am. So you're going to see some big news in the next month with regard to acute renal failure as a very good indicator of hospital homicides, where COVID was around for 9 months to a year, and there was no indication in most places that acute renal failure was going up. So the attribution to COVID just doesn't take. And then all of a sudden, November 2nd, 2020 rolls around, and that's the date. If you go, just do a search on NCTAP, cms.gov, and you will find at the bottom of the page Veklury, remdesivir, Olumiant, baricitinib, and the 20% adder. And I found out from somebody in accounting, a whistleblower that I can't mention the name of, it also happened with the ventilators. So they did have a problem with the ventilators, and there were papers written in March, April, May of 2020, and they stopped using ventilators at most places, right? And they started using them again when they were incentivized. Okay, if you subsidize something, you will get more of it. And when they started using them again, they're still using them today. I mean, people with decent oxygen, but they're paid so much money, 20% on a $1 million ICU stay. That's an extra 100 grand or 200. What did I say? 20%? That's an extra 200 grand just to throw remdesivir through some of the screens.
Well, that's why the hospital, that's the motivates the hospital to put it on the protocols, because the physicians themselves would have no motivation to do it. I remember the other thing I was going to add to the opioid crisis, which we had lawfare. Early on in the opioid crisis, we had doctors that were criminally prosecuted for inadequate treatment of pain. You don't think that sent reverberations through the medical system? And one doctor was fined $2 million or something, and another was put in prison. It was in North Carolina, Florida, and California. This all happened. And it's when those cases came down, those are not malpractice cases. Those were criminal patients abuse cases. And we froze. We became afraid to treat pain, and we sent everything to the evangelists, the pain specialists who knew something magical that we didn't know. And they were just killing my patients hand over fist. This was oh my God. I hope the history is written properly about this. People should be just ashamed of themselves for how they did that. But COVID was the same thing. Now, it seems to me that last time we spoke, you were more concerned about vaccines. You recognize a lot of this stuff in the hospital setting. What is something shifting? Or are you still worried about both? Is just some more data coming in through on the hospitals? What's your feeling these days?
It's both. I mean, I said, gosh, it's been 2 years since I showed all the acute reactions. So, I mean, if you separate acute from long-term or chronic, you get different kind of, you guys call them sequelae or sequelae. The cancers are through the roof, but the ones that started were the ones associated with the blood. Lymph node cancer was in Massachusetts, 400% of normal. Oh, I should tell you, I have a third state. I'll be revealing the third state's data in about a month. I also have Minnesota. Somebody got the population of the 3 states I have is 5% of the United States. So I have all the death certificates from 2019 through 2023 for 5% of the entire United States. The trends I've found are amazing. But yeah, the acute stuff ramped down because the vaccines ramped down. People aren't taking them anymore. So the acute conditions that occur from vaccines, like pulmonary emboly, a lot of strokes. Strokes are very difficult to find, but I found them in the data because they span about 50 different G codes, whereas pulmonary embolism, there are 2 codes for it. So yeah, everything's still going on. I'm not backing off the vaccines. I just, the hospital homicides were at least as many people killed, and I estimate, and it's really hard to say this number because it's very, very difficult to back it up. About 500,000 people killed by hospital homicides in the United States in the last 4 years, about 500,000 vaccine deaths. So the million deaths. And then COVID is somewhere between 80 to 90% fraudulent. It wasn't COVID. I mean, I have, one thing I wanted to say with regard to the CDC, and I think it was the banner for this show. So I should probably mention that. It's in my other book is this thing. It's called the CDC Memorandum. This was served to the directors of CDC, FDA, and NIH. And it puts them on notice because it gives them knowledge of the 172 enumerated factual allegations. So it's written like a legal document. And in those paragraphs 49, 50, and 51 show that the CDC was contacted by Greg Piper of Just the News, and he asked them, there's an article written in the Brownstone that says you're fraudulently omitting vaccine as a cause of death on death records. Is that true? And their response is, the article is incorrect. The death records in question say vaccination, not vaccine, and a vaccination is not a vaccine or cause of death. So we didn't count it. So
What?
that was an excuse.
Wait a minute.
Yes, I'm telling
So
you right.
in the banner, craziness. In the banner, it mentions ICD-10 code Y59.0. Y59.0. I couldn't find a 5.9. I could only find 9.5. Is that?
No, there's
I mean, I have to do ICD-10s all that.
No,
It didn't show up on my.
Y59. Well, you treat living people.
Well, let me just tell you. Well, that's true. But if you look, well, maybe that is what it is. But I have an ICD-9 sort of app I use, and that's how I code everything.
If you know what a T50Z is, you would write a T50Z.
Yeah.
That's one of the codes.
T50Z is like a medication reaction. T50Z is like T50S is like a medication reaction, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Z is a vaccine
or
reaction.
T50.
Yep. But on the death records, it's Y59. In fact, the WHO came out with the U12.9, which is specific to COVID vaccines. And when I testified in New Hampshire, after me, the Bureau Chief of Statistics in New Hampshire testified that in preparing for the meeting, she asked her staff to look up U12.9, and they couldn't find any vaccine deaths. Well, that's because the CDC in the United States didn't adopt that code. She's incompetent, doesn't know how to do her job. And if you look in Germany and the UK in the notes, it says U12.9 is a subset of Y59.0. So the point is, here's what happened. In Massachusetts, somebody that said his death record, Solomon Kizito, died January 16, 2021. His cause of death was acute bronchopneumonia in the setting of idiopathic thrombocytopenia in a person recently vaccinated. The death certifier is telling you specifically that the vaccine killed the person by thrombocytopenia. And it was on there as Y59, and that's an automatic code generated by the CDC. The next 8 in Massachusetts were not coded. The first 3 in Minnesota were coded. The next 6 were not coded. The new state that I have, the first 1 was coded. The next 3 were not coded. Being that it's automatic and requires manual intervention for things that don't get coded, that means they either stopped coding it or they deleted the Y59, thereby depriving all of us from the knowledge that the vaccines have recordedly killed hundreds of people across the United States without question. It's fraud. And she, in her email to Greg Piper,
could they have switched it to U12.9?
No, there's no U12. It's not adopted in the US. Nobody uses U12.9. Y590 means viral vaccines. That's the one you use.
Yeah, for living people.
There's also T88.1. You can use T88.1 on death records, but the T50Z is usually for living people.
So, So what do we do with all this, I guess, is the question. And what are your plans moving forward? You have some suits, some cases going. I'm worried about a lot of things. By the way, before we get into that, I'm surprised that bronchopneumonia with thrombocytopenia related to vaccine administration showed up on a death certificate. I don't think that would go through on California. You know what I mean? You can't even put pneumonia on a death certificate in California.
Oh, wait a minute.
You have to say cardiopulmonary arrest due to pulmonary arrest due to bronchopneumonia, or put bronchopneumonia as contributing cause. It's a freaking mess in California, at least in LA County.
No, I'll explain. Yeah, no. So the medical examiners, they usually do a pretty good job with causes A, B, C, D in reverse time order, where you get the underlying cause being the last one. When physicians do it, the physicians aren't that good unless they work at an old folks home where they're doing 30 or 40 a year, right? But if you're just a physician, the ER doctors, not too good. They don't care. That, in fact, that the whole I have too much to tell you right now. The whole system around I-46 cardiac arrest, all that means is heart stopped, right? It has
That's
nothing
right.
to do with.
And if you don't
Nothing
put
to
that
do
on a death certificate, what you get from the county is a threat. Well, does this family prepare to go through an autopsy? It'll take us 2 months to get to it. That's what happens if you don't do it the way they want it. That may or may not reflect the reality of the medical circumstances. It's almost impossible to put 4 boxes and describe a complex biological process that ends in death, particularly where you're required to put heart stopped, lung stopped. You know, you've taken up 2 or 3 of them with that.
Yeah, so in looking at some of this data, there are causes like cardiac arrest that I can't really trust, and I won't get into that now.
That's right.
They're doing some weird
That's
stuff
right.
with it, but there are things that you can trust.
Right.
Thrombocytopenia, you can trust because in order to write that, they did some blood labs and there's a low platelet count. So they know.
But how did but there's no relation between thrombocytopenia and bronchopneumonia, none. And so that's why I'm like, huh? How did they take that? Weird. Unless it was just a contributing influence or something.
I would agree with you. I'd agree, except that there were so many misdiagnoses of pneumonia because of small foci of pulmonary emboli. It's on the pulmonary side, not the respiratory side.
Oh, well, that's no longer thrombocyte. That's consumptive coagulopathy. That's TTP, things like that. That's not that's thrombocytopenia. That's like saying fever. You know what I mean? Thrombocytopenia is a feature, a symptom of the clotting process. Okay, that's totally different. That's totally different.
It's not that you're not making enough platelets.
Oh man,
it's that
if you'll permit me.
Yes.
If you'll permit me, I am acutely aware of the. I'm going to use a word that is good here, but doesn't seem patronizing. Your level of sophistication has markedly changed since we first started talking. You're aware of that? I mean, you really now, you're saying stuff to me that I used to say to you, and you're going beyond that even. You're going well beyond that. So congratulations on getting your head around something. Well, you do now. Apparently it likes you because it's very complicated, and you now seem to have your head around these. And I'm not just talking about the pathological processes that led to death, but the recording irregularities, the structural problems with the administrations, the pathways and the forces that go into creating these centralized pathways. This is very complicated stuff before I wrap up with you, let me ask 2 questions. Is this shocking to you as a layperson now walking into the medical system that this is what's going on here? And what have your big surprises been? And what do you want us to do about it?
So everybody has their own life experience. No, it's not shocking to me. I've met pathological people in many parts of my life. And so this is like, I think the reason why I noticed this and found this stuff is because of my history. What needs to be done? I mean, I don't know how much I want to divulge here, but it starts with grand jury investigations. The government has a monopoly in criminal prosecution. All this is criminal. The problem with the civil side. So I'm a systems engineer. I look at the whole system. I can tell you why the lawyers turned down cases, the scarcity of legal resources, and why cases didn't come forward. The problem on the civil side is very simple. It's standing doctrine. People don't get to discovery. They don't get to a substantive case. And so in the standing doctrine or the pleading stages, they're dismissed before they even get to plead the case. And standing doctrine has been around for like 150 years, but they put a wrapper around it in 1992 in Lujan versus Defenders of Wildlife. But the big case is Ashcroft versus Iqbal in 2009 that stole all our rights. Now it's a 5-4 decision versus your right to petition the government for redress of grievances, which is the last one listed in the First Amendment of the United States. The First Amendment, okay, the most foundational right without which you have no rights. Because if you can't go to the government to get a guy's foot out of your mouth, you can't very well speak. So society's destabilized without the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. So on the civil side, that needs to be fixed. I'm going after that with my case at the First Circuit Court of Appeals. And on the criminal side, I have ideas. The other side is they have all the money and the power. I don't want to mention it. So I got to find a Western state with a certain set of laws.
Did you ever imagine at this point in your life, I mean, you were a little bit reluctant when you started going down this road, I remember, but did you ever imagine you'd get this far into this sort of thing at this stage of your life, this time of life?
No, somebody just called me with it was a job for about 400 grand a year. I'm the best at what I did in semiconductor research, putting deals together. It's like going to war. You put together a battle plan, and you don't always go frontal. Sometimes you fragment flank, multi-point, choke point. And, the answer I got back with your social media profile is incompatible with our company. So my career, I have no income. I got nothing.
God.
So did I think I would be doing this? Of course not. I had no idea that people, it's a big grand plan, and I'm just playing chess, and I'm tracing back to the origins. Everybody gets stuck on something. It's remdesivir. Like, you don't know that. It could be vancomycin in combination with remdesivir. You don't, everybody who has dogma for what they think they know the answer, they're not stepping back to look at the big picture. Most of this is behavioral. It's not biological. People were coerced. People were solicited, threatened, and so forth. And so I look at the overall system from various purviews: psychology, sociology, economics, law, everything.
Yeah. Where do you want people to go to follow and support?
Okay, the book, both books. Well, I don't know what finger I have up. The Real CDC. That's at therealcdc.com. It's really easy. Therealcdc.com. You can basically buy the books there, but on Twitter it's at John Beaudoin Sr. No dot, just JOHNBEAUDOINSR. That's my Twitter handle. And then I have a company that the press releases are coming out today. The first ones, and that is Summa Logica LLC, SUMMA LOGICA LLC.com. Basically, the press releases are, the books are available. They deal with fraud. I prove everything. I prove everything from top to bottom. I'm not talking about peer-reviewed research papers with opinions of people talking back and forth. These are facts. 98-year-old gets injected, heart rate goes to 145 beats per minute for 2 days. She's dead of a heart attack. They said, oh, she died of a heart attack. No, she died from the vaccine. Those kind of things. I have them in there. So that's, I do appreciate.
It's interesting. I had a 99-year-old about 6 weeks ago develop exactly that. I was able, tried to get her to go to the hospital. One thing about 100-year-olds, they won't go to the hospital. They sometimes will just go, screw it, I'm not going. And so I had to manage her as an outpatient, and I managed to get her through it, and everything is fine now. But I made a VAERS report, on this near-death complication. It was the only elderly patient I had that had a complication from the vaccine, by the way, or the boosters, and or at least an acute. I have some concerns about some chronic stuff, but the acute kind of illness like that, no feedback from VAERS at all. Case number, and that's it. They're going to have a guy look into it. Have a guy look into it.
Lots of stories for you. Lots of VAERS stories for you. It's bad. They're hiding everything. They're covering everything up. I proved that the CDC covered up many vaccine deaths, and that the state, especially Massachusetts, which has the most to gain. 600 pharma companies, 47 billion in venture capital financing, Moderna's headquarters in R&D, Pfizer's divisional headquarters in R&D. Walensky's from Massachusetts, and my congressman is Jake Auchincloss, son of Hugh Auchincloss, Fauci's number 2 for more than a decade. It's all Massachusetts. Crazy.
Well, we will follow you. We'll follow up with you, and Godspeed.
Thank you. And look for an announcement from me and another group, the Finest Technologies, Ed Dowd's group, and within the next month.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Beautiful. We will look. You betcha. We'll look forward to that. We're going to bring Nick Searcy in here. You can see his movie at theworontruthmovie.com. More about the movie there. Also, his book, hang on, I'm going to get that for you, which is Justify This, A Career Without Compromise. We'll be back after this break. We'll hear from some of our friends, and please do listen carefully. These are all people Susan and I use, and we support these guys thoroughly, and they support us, and it's a nice thing to be a part of and to create for the parallel economies out there. So, back with Nick Searcy after this. Let's talk about aging, because everyone wants to know how to slow it down. For almost a decade, I've been taking a healthy aging supplement called True Niagen. This supplement boosts NAD, that's something that cells can't live without. It's done with a patented form of nicotinamide riboside called NR, or Niagen. It's more efficient and more scientifically reviewed than NMN or other NAD boosters. True Niagen is truly the best way to boost NAD levels. and it's made by Chromadex. They are the gold standard in the NAD space. Dr. Charles Brenner, the scientist who discovered the NAD boosting potential of NR, explains.
And the center of the metabolism that allows the conversion of food into energy is NAD coenzymes. And NAD gets disturbed in the aging process. And as we're exposed to conditions of metabolic stress, Niagen, which is the form of NR that was developed by Chromadex, is the best and the only fully legal form of NR. And this is really the gold standard for NAD boosting vitamins.
I love this product. I urge you to try it. Go to drdrew.com/TrueNiagen for 20% off your order. That is drdrew.com/TrueNiagen, TRUNIAGEN, and enter Dr. Drew at checkout, DRDREW, enter it at checkout for 20% off. We all know the value of a good night's sleep. We feel better, look better, have more energy to spare, but you could be missing out on all of those benefits if you're sleeping on sheets that are too hot or too cold or just plain uncomfortable. I have the solution. Cozy Earth bedding. Cozy Earth is the softest and most comfortable sheets, blankets, loungewear, and more. They use premium viscose from highly sustainable bamboo, and we sleep in them regularly. I wear their t-shirts. Susan wears their pajamas. Cozy Earth bedding comes with a 100-night sleep trial, which means you have up to 100 nights to sleep on them, wash them, try them out. If you're not in love, just return them within 100 days for a full refund. Susan and I love them. In fact, we have Cozy Earth sheets on our bed right now, and they made a huge difference in our sleep. If you've never tried Cozy Earth, we have some awesome news. You can save up to 35% off Cozy Earth right now. But hurry, this offer will not last. Go to CozyEarth.com, enter my promo code DREW at checkout for up to 35% off on your first order. That is CozyEarth.com, promo code DREW, COZYEARTH, CozyEarth.com, code DREW. There are 4 distinct and outstanding medical kits from the Wellness Company: a first aid kit, a travel emergency kit. I was very instrumental in developing that one. I love it. A COVID emergency kit. But let's unpack their medical emergency kit, the one that gives you immediate access to treatment for a variety of medical conditions. Here's the kit: pneumonia, upper respiratory infections, skin infections, gastrointestinal infections. You'll have on-hand medication that will even serve as immediate prophylaxis against a sexually transmitted infection, rapid intervention for Lyme and other tick-borne illnesses. Of course, we've added Tamiflu to our kits in case the avian flu should become human-to-human transmissible. Then we know something is up and we want to be ready. And look, we want to be covered for bioterrorism even. And of course, the Nobel Prize-winning antiparasitic ivermectin, and a how-to guide and a virtual consultant. Get access to these prescription meds by going to drdrew.com/TWC to save 15% off. That is $30 off the medical emergency kit. drdrew.com/TWC for 15% off the kit and any of their kits or their supplements. Do it now. drdrew.com/TWC.
Dr. Drew said the best way to quit drinking is by going cold turkey, and he's a doctor, so why would you question doctors?
Dr. Drew called me unfixable.
Thank you, Caleb, for those intros. You said there's more coming. Is that true?
Yeah.
There's more.
There's more
I saw
coming.
A cartoon. Oh boy.
I work on a little bit every week.
Thank you for that. Back to the TWC, the Wellness Company. We have some really interesting kits coming with very affordable EpiPens and things like that. And we've got a store coming through my website where very interesting pharmaceuticals are going to be available for situations like sexual health, reproductive health, that kind of thing. Of course, I sleep on Cozy Earth sheets, and I love their t-shirts. Don't forget they have that stuff too. And then True Niagen, I've been on for years. I'm convinced that is your best way to elevate NAD levels. There's other ways to do it, but I think NR is absolutely the best. And finally, our friends at Paleo Valley. I'm literally looking over the top of this camera at a bag of the bone broth. I'm a full-on addict, particularly the chocolate when I add to my coffee, which I did just before the show, literally. Means it's a richer source of collagen than brands made from hides. We take a bag with us on the road. We also travel with enough beef sticks to, look, the venison's great. The beef, I love them all, but the venison, the new one, is really kind of my favorite right now. I keep it in my travel bag, so I use it on plane flights and whatnot. And of course, the Paleo Valley beef tallow. The fact that tallow was taken away from our use as a fat is a huge mistake. And Paleo Valley, of course, provides very high quality tallow that Susan and I use for cooking, certainly instead set of seed oils. You should be aware of the risk of seed oils. Tallow is your best bet. Get it at drdrew.com/PaleoValley. You got 15% off your first order there and 20% off when you subscribe. That is drdrew.com/PaleoValley. Next, we're welcoming our next guest, Nick Searcy. You can follow him on X at YesNickSearcy. Nick is NickSearcy. He's also at Locals. And of course, the movie is The War on Truth. Please welcome Nick Searcy. Nick,
Hi,
welcome.
Doctor. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
You betcha. So I want to start this conversation by talking about truth and why you selected that as the title, because I've been preoccupied lately with thinking about how. I was talking to Bill Maher about this too. There's the book, Justify This. Check that out as well. But I was talking to Bill Maher about how he and I were trained at, the big Ivy League school, or little Ivy League in my case, and we were taught that the truth was the ultimate objective, that we were trying to ascend to some contemplation of the truth, that we would never quite get there. You have to be literally God to understand the truth, but that our job was to use this limited instrument we have to try to ascend to it. All of a sudden, truth has no meaning. Truth is something that uses something called logic to ascend to, and that's something that old white men created and therefore has zero value. What happened to the truth, and why did you select that as the title for your film?
Well, we chose it for the title because the government has been lying to us for decades. I always tend to ask people, when did you get the impression that the government would never lie to you? Was it weapons of mass destruction? Was it the Kennedy assassination? What was it? Because they've been lying to us for years. And as you just, were talking to the doctor before me, I mean, they are still continuing to hide the truth. And on the movie War on Truth is about January 6th, and they have lied from day one and probably days before January 6th about the nature of that day and the people that were there. And so that's why we chose that for the title. They cannot allow the truth to come out about January 6th because it would destroy their narrative and it would incriminate most of the government.
In terms of the perpetration of the falsities, is that who gets incriminated, or that what the incrimination would be about?
Well, for example, Christopher Wray goes before Congress and says there's no evidence of Antifa or BLM being present on that day. I have evidence of it. I'm just some actor from Burbank. I mean, we have footage of people changing clothes in the bushes. John L. Sullivan, a known BLM activist, was in the hallway when Ashley Babbitt was shot. I mean, this is just a lie. This is just a complete lie. And the lie is continued by the way they treat these people. The way the FBI and the DOJ has gone after the people who went to Washington on January 6th is so out of proportion to what they did. And when you compare it to what was done to the BLM riots, the protests that went on before it, even the riots that went on in 2017 when Trump was inaugurated, those were much worse. But the way they treat these people, they treat them like as if they're serial killers or dangerous cartel leaders. They're breaking down their doors at 6 a.m. And these people have never been arrested for anything before, and they're being charged with trespassing. But they're treating them like they have bombs ready to go off in their houses. It's totally a lie. It's done to intimidate and to send a message to the American people. Don't ever protest anything that we do ever again, or what's being done to these people will be done to you.
Or is it that the particular objects of the protest were sort of sacred environments that got violated, and even though they didn't harm anything in there, they scared some people inside? Is it that kind of thing that they're taking aim at?
Well, Dr. Drew, what nobody seems to remember is that the process that was going on inside the House and the Senate at the time that the Capitol was breached was exactly what the people who went to Washington that day wanted to happen. Ted Cruz had just stood up and challenged the vote. They were challenging the vote. They were going to send it back for 10 days to the states to verify the vote to make sure that Joe Biden actually won the election. There is no one in that crowd that really wanted to stop those proceedings. The only people with an incentive to stop the proceedings were Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats and the people who wanted to go ahead and certify Joe Biden. So this is why when you see the Capitol Police allowing people to come in. On one side of the building, they're waving them in. On the other side, it's a pitched battle. They wanted this to happen so that they could come in there, they would have an excuse to shut down that proceeding. And what happened? Immediately after they cleared the House and Senate, they cleared the protesters away, they came back in and said, it's all too risky now. We have to go ahead and certify the vote without verifying it. So who would have wanted that to happen? Certainly not the people who went to Washington on January 6th.
And did you get anyone, or do you have one in the film that testifies to that fact, or that any witnesses that give you that information?
There's a witness in our film, Tarek Johnson, TK Johnson. He was a Capitol policeman on that day. And on that day, when the people were allowed into the building, he had radioed his superiors saying, we have to clear the House and Senate, because if these people do come into the chamber while Senate is in session, this could be a bloodbath, because they are required to use force to stop people if they enter during a session of Congress. He couldn't get an answer from superiors. No one would okay him. No one would radio back to him and say, yes, go ahead and clear the House and Senate. He did it on his own volition. He cleared the House and Senate, got them all out down a back staircase, and he was suspended the next day because of that. They wanted something worse to happen, Dr. Drew. I know it's hard to wrap your head around that the government could function this way, but they wanted it to be really much worse than it was.
How did you get involved in all this?
That's a good question. I wound up going to Washington on January 6th. I was there, and I just went to see what was going on. I was actually on my way back east just to visit my parents, and I thought, well, I'll just stop by Washington and see what happens. And so I was there, and what happened to me was that I saw a lot of people singing, and it seemed like a happy occasion to me. I didn't see any violence. I didn't see anybody hurt. I saw people singing and waving flags and praying for the country and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And when I got back to my Airbnb that night and turned on the television, I didn't see any of that. All I saw was this fracas that happened at the White House that I had no idea went on. And I'm absolutely sure that 95, 99% of the people that were there that day didn't even know that it happened. So that's what set me on the path of like, why are they lying about this? Why would they never show how big the crowd was? Why do they never show the peaceful parts of the day where the people that were there were very patriotic, not the kind of people that want to destroy democracy. These are people that revere the Constitution, that believe in America as founded. And so that's what put me on the path. I just sort of said, well, I would like to investigate this. And when I started hearing the stories of the people who were literally having their lives destroyed because they walked into the Capitol on January 6th, most of them with the permission of the Capitol Police, when I saw that, I had to make capital punishment. And then since they have not stopped, Dr. Drew, they are continuing to arrest people. They've arrested more people this year than they arrested last year for January 6th. I decided we have to continue the story. We have to make a second movie, and that's what the War on Truth is.
It's interesting. I find myself so often on this program asking people, did you ever imagine at this stage of life, this is what you'd be doing? I mean, this is not something you could have foreseen when you were 25. It's so interesting how I guess history plays out, and you kind of feel compelled, as you said, you have to create the second movie. You have to do these things. Am I reading this correctly?
Oh, absolutely. I'm just a guy who wanted to be an actor. I was a stage actor for years. And all I wanted to do was be in television and film, and I did that for a long, long time. But around 2010 or so, I started to really see things going downhill. And Andrew Breitbart had a huge effect on me. He was a friend of mine. And when he passed away, I sort of felt like, okay, why am I not addressing these issues that I feel strongly about? And that's led me down the path I've been on for the last few years. I made a movie about Kermit Gosnell, about the abortion doctor who was found guilty of murder in Philadelphia. That was not a popular movie to be making in Hollywood. So I sort of, at that point, I'd already made my bed. So I decided there's no going back now. I'm going to keep on this path. So
I'm guessing you don't have so many job options as you did prior to going down this path.
Well, actually, Dr. Drew, for whatever reason, I've continued to work. I mean, I've got a Netflix series that's coming out this year called The Perfect Couple that I'm in. There's a movie, Reagan, is coming out in August with Dennis Quaid playing Ronald Reagan. And I try to tell people, I'm sure there are certain jobs that some people look at me and go, I don't want to hire that guy, but that happens to everybody. There's certain jobs that I've gotten because I have been outspoken or been honest about what I thought. So I think it's a trade-off. I know plenty of actors in Hollywood who come up to me and say, buddy, I agree with you, but I would never say it out loud because I'd never work again. And I go, well, you might be surprised. I've continued to make a living. I think we have to stop being afraid of them. We have to stop being afraid of the bullies that want to silence us.
Yeah, it really is that 70% of people that are just sort of like putting their head down and ducking and wanting to get on with their life and not be bothered by all this. And it's some 10 to 20% that's making all the noise and seem on both sides get hypnotized by things. And then there's another 5 or 10% that, like you, that go, hey, let's push back on all this stuff. What's going on here? Try to get that 70% back to stand up again.
Yeah, I think it's important. And when I was doing a movie in Montana back in 21, and I was in the middle of the movie, and I kind of got COVID symptoms. I lost my sense of taste, and I was feeling really bad. And I talked to that reminded me of this when listening to the first part of your show. I had a doctor in, I won't say where he was, but he kind of surreptitiously did a Zoom call with me and prescribed for me ivermectin and the HCQ and the other things, a cocktail of about 6 things. And he had the Federal Express it to me himself personally because no pharmacy would fill the prescription. And I got that stuff and I took it, and 36 hours later, I was back on the horse. It was amazing. And when you think of how they tried to suppress the idea of ivermectin being a good alleviator of these symptoms or a cure, they've been lying to us about many, many things, and we have to be on guard all the time. You can't just accept what you're told by the mainstream media and the government.
So let's look at a little footage of the movie, if you don't mind. Give people a little taste of it.
Great.
And where can they watch the film?
Yeah. SalemNow.com is a good place to find the film, and also there's TheWarOnTruthMovie.com. Both of those websites. There are other places, but those are the main 2.
We have not to date seen any evidence of anarchist violent extremists or people subscribing to Antifa.
This guy is not just undercover, okay? He is committing violence.
Everybody that was on the ground on J6, police officers and demonstrators alike, were all set up.
They have this mystery story that we're some kind of domestic terrorist group.
Lovely. There it is. Again, I opened our conversation talking about the truth. What do you think is so? What has happened to the truth? What's your theory? I feel truth has been devalued. I think pro-structuralism has said truth is just another way of looking at things, which is I choke on it when I say that. But there's more than that. People don't seem the least bit concerned with truth many times.
Well, I think this idea that truth is relative, and this whole idea of like everybody has their own truth. My truth is this, and my truth, your truth is that. There is a movement, and that's been through our higher education institutions for decades, that truth is relative, because if truth is fungible, then you can have a totalitarian state, because the only truth is what the state decrees. And that's really where we're headed.
party.
That's why there's a war on truth, because who gets to decide what the truth is if there isn't any respect for actual provable truth?
Yeah. It's so weird that at a time when people rely on technologies and the sort of the application of scientific processes and electronics, that it's because of truth that people are able to make these things that we're using right now. And yet, as these things become more elaborate, more involved, and more a part of our life, the truth upon which the science is based, that this is all possible, becomes less meaningful. I just always seem kind of ironic to me.
Oh, it is. But, the technology side of things, it's a good vehicle for propaganda as well as truth. So the, evil forces have realized that this all can be manipulated to increase their power, to centralize their power. And that's where we're headed. That's what people have to wake up from. Those 70%, that's what I want to say. Stop trusting these people. Stop believing everything you're told. Investigate for yourself.
Mm-hmm. I think that's very, very good advice. Tell me about this series, the Reagan series coming out. Interesting.
Oh, it's a movie. It's a feature film. It's a feature film. It's going to be in theaters August 30th. It stars Dennis Quaid as Ronald Reagan, Penelope Ann Miller as Nancy Reagan, and I played Secretary of State James Baker in the movie, which was fun.
I can see that. I see that. That's interesting.
I got to have a really nice wig. That's what I like most about it.
I'm seeing Dennis next week for something. I'm working on a project of his. So any message you'd like me to relay to him?
Yeah, tell Dennis, let's play golf again one of these days. We got to play a couple of times when we were shooting. I'd like to see him again.
Done and done. Well, Nick, I appreciate you stopping by, and congratulations on the movie. It is thewarontruthmovie.com. Any place you'd like people to go? It's the Nick Searcy. What's the X handle?
Yes, Nick Searcy. Like, are you Nick Searcy? Yes,
Nick Searcy. Yes. Yes. All right, perfect. All right, thank you, sir. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Dr. Drew. Nice meeting you.
You got a nice meet you as well. So there you go. As I said, tomorrow, I got that wrong a little bit. Let me tell you who our guest is there. I just was reading about him. It's Oren McIntyre, host of The Blaze, amongst other things. Host of the Aaron McIntyre Show on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. And then we also have Jeffrey Tucker, who you all know from the Brownstone Institute. And then Mike Benz coming in on the 28th, and Kelly Victory takes over for a day. And there is the upcoming schedule. It's too far away for me to see. Winston Marshall, the musician who spoke out at the Oxford Club against Nancy Pelosi in a debate. I thought he was erudite, and it'd be interesting to get his ideas. Seems like somebody we should be listening to. Seems like a very clear thinker. And back to clear thinking, Jeffrey Tucker, of course, set up the Brownstone Institute. And Jeffrey Tucker to me is illustrative of something that I've been thinking lately. I was on Gutfeld last night with him and Bill Maher. It was really a fun show to do. And something, I don't remember if I said it on the air, or if I said it to Kat Timpf off the air, but she said something about 2 or 3 weeks ago that made my skin, the hair stand up in the back of my neck. She was talking about some of the excesses of lockdown and overreach. And finally she goes, some of us haven't gotten over COVID yet. Not the illness, what the government was able to do, and the world government was able to do. It's hard to get over that. And so Jeffrey Tucker is my champion as it comes to addressing that, trying to come to terms with it, trying to make sure this doesn't happen again. And don't forget, the World Health Organization is out there trying to get extreme centralization over all duly elected sovereign officials in the next thing that they decide is an emergency. It's just unthinkable. And I hope you learned something from John Beaudoin today about what centralization does and what over-bureaucratization does to the practice of medicine is just anathema. It's terrible. It's not good. These create these pathways that are arbitrary. You get the opioid crisis. You get some of the things John was reporting on. You get so many different things that would not happen if a patient and a physician were allowed to just do their work together. That's it. Quickly before we go, We have our friends, of course, at MyPillow. You can get deals, beach towels. Emily Barsh is obsessed with their slides. They look like Prada or Kanye slides. Let's see, drdrew.com. So where do I go, everybody? Also, we're going to a conference. Susan and I are going to be at a conference in Canada talking about disinformation and censorship. The goal is to come up with a strategy to push back on some of the Canadian excesses. Interestingly, I saw Justin Trudeau's brother talking to Tucker Carlson. That was a really interesting interview. He's an interesting guy. That is on June 21st through June 23rd in Victoria, I believe. It says Vancouver, but I think it's Victoria. You can find out more at weunify.ca. weunify.ca. A lot of the TWC medical board will be there. Let's see. Caleb, can you help me? I'm trying to get the MyPillow code and
oh, yeah. It's just
link.
mypillow.com/Drew.
Okay, well, there it is. And they've sent us a bunch of stuff. We bought a bunch of stuff from them. We're very, very happy with it. And they are the nicest people. The whole issue of these parallel economies sometimes is just working with and for people who deserve your business and who want to serve you. That's really kind of how it was all. That's what the invisible hand was all about from the very beginnings. It's mutual interest shared that brings people together in business. All right, so as I said, tomorrow is earlier still, I believe. Are you playing a MyPillow ad? Is that what's happening?
No, just the overlay.
No. Okay, I see the MyPillow overlay because there's a little delay all of a sudden on my screen here, and I thought maybe there was something going. But tomorrow we're still earlier still. Today we're a little early, as you see. I believe tomorrow is noon Pacific. Is that correct? 3 Eastern? Caleb, I just want to confirm that before
Pacific.
I champion
noon
it.
Pacific tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, noon Pacific. I'll still be in New York. We will not have a show on Thursday. That's when I have to travel back. But we will see you tomorrow at noon. Should be a very interesting show. Again, Jeffrey Tucker, stop. Again, we'll see you there. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.